Hey, this is a part 2 video. Go check out the first part. The sound is terrible, and I apologize for that, but it's a solid video. This is a takedown of Second Thought and his video, Socialism for Absolute Beginners. It is full of nothing but nonsensical leftist tropes, and I'm going to try and point out as many of them as I can. Please stick around and enjoy the ride. In leftist economic discussion, you are helpless. You cannot solve any of your problems on your own. You cannot make yourself more valuable and therefore secure a higher wage. There's nothing you can do to make your situation better. That's why leftist economics is so authoritarian, because at the core of it all is a fundamental belief that you have to turn your autonomy over to them, and then they, whoever they become, are the ones who can make your life better. Just take a listen to this.
Him to make a profit. Regardless of whether he's a nice guy or not, his profit calculation will demand that he take into account a few things, like how much he needs you and how many people out there are gunning for your job. The more those people are desperate, for example, because without your job they might end up homeless, the more he can push your wage down.
Like I said, this is about selling desperation. Those people out there are desperate. He goes on to say, because they'll be homeless without your job. The alternative for him is whatever job I have. If those people can't get it, their only alternative is going to be homelessness, right? The other thing is he mentions how valuable. That's one of the equations that your boss has to take into consideration is how valuable you are. Will you make yourself valuable, not just from the contributions that you put in at the workplace, the amount of work that you do, but also through your own education, you adding to your own value by becoming a more educated person. So it starts with this premise of the boss has all the power and you have none, but it's breaking it down into a part where it's like, well, yeah, actually, there's a bunch of people gunning for my job. That means there's a ton of qualified people to do it. You can enter a field where there's not a lot of people who are qualified to do what you're doing. That's a major point here of emphasis. Is like, well, I have no power. I have no control over the workplace or what I'm being paid. Yeah, you do. But that's an internal thing. You have to make yourself more valuable. And leftists don't want to sell that point to you, because why would you turn your autonomy over to them if you had the power to improve your situation on your own? Okay, so here comes one of the most ridiculous comparisons that you could possibly ask for. This is one of the most insane things that is said during this video, full of insane things. But this is literally a comparison between feudalism and capitalism. This is just beyond the pale.
Under feudalism, people were made to work the nobles' land and hand over the product of their labor. They had no choice and very little freedom to do otherwise. You work the land or you're going to be in a world of hurt. Now, you need to work the corporate, industrial, or service industry gig and hand over your time and whatever you produce while you're on the clock to the capitalist. In theory, you have the freedom not to work.
Okay, so we're going to get into this right now, because what he's getting ready to talk about is negative and positive rights. He's going to say that you have a choice, you theoretically have a choice not to work. Never in human history, prior to really the Industrial Revolution, prior to that period, were you able to not work and somehow still survive. Because at the end of the day, humanity has always had to, as a human being, you have always had to make some form of effort and contribute in some way to your own survival. But what the socialists look at is the idea that you have to work in order to have the means to keep yourself alive is in and of itself coercion. That in and of itself, the natural human condition of I have to contribute to my own survival, is force in the same way that feudal lords force you to work their land.
Or to work for whomever you want, as well as to negotiate with your employer. But in the same way serfs needed a place to live and food to put on their table, money from employment in the capitalist industry is necessary to live. And it's not like the power is balanced between the two of you.
So yes, you have to make money in order to live. Like, it's an insane idea that that's wrong, that you have to contribute, that the idea that you have to contribute to your own survival is somehow an evil created by capitalism. It's the most ridiculous thing I could possibly think of. And he goes on and on this point, and what we're really talking about is negative and positive rights. So in the first video, I talked about the freedom from and the freedom to. And what he's saying is you're not free if you have to contribute to your own survival. That's the core message here. If you have to contribute to your own survival, then it's just like working for feudal lords. And that is an insane way to view the world. From an economic perspective, it's an insane way to look at things.
Not long ago, during the dawn of this new economic system, most workers had to hand over the majority of their life, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, to their employers, often from a young age and in unspeakable conditions.
That's 100% true. But what we don't talk about, and this is a common failure of leftist economics, is that we don't look at this through the lens of history. We don't look at this through the lens of history. We look at through how we live our life today. And we look at those conditions and we go, I can't believe people were forced to do this. And the reality is people weren't forced to do this. The agrarian way of life prior to this was so undesirable that people left that life and flocked to the factories so that they could work, because that was a better life than the life that they had prior. Doesn't make it good. Just makes it better. And so we don't look at this with any sense of historical perspective on what the world was like at the time. What we do is we take what the world is like today and we compare it to what the world was like then and say, look, see how terrible the world was?
We only very recently made this somewhat more bearable. The reason we haven't made even more improvements today is that capitalism did not actually represent much of a fundamental change from feudalism.
So, feudalism. I mean, watch Braveheart. Prima nocta, right? All the working their land under threat of death, all this stuff. And he's talking about the fact that free market economics, capitalism, is not much of a fundamental change from that. That is crazy. It's a crazy way to look at the world. I don't even understand how you could say this with a straight face. When they talk about like these apps are owned by China and they're trying to feed our youth all this misinformation. And I mean, how can anybody take that statement seriously, that capitalism doesn't represent a significant change from feudalism? It's crazy.
The relationship of domination and coercion isn't all that different. It's just that this time, the size of the group with freedom is slightly bigger. A couple thousand instead of a couple hundred.
So this is an interesting point. I want you to pay attention here, because what he's talking about is the couple thousand are the people who own the factories, who own the businesses, and so on and so forth.
And you don't necessarily have to be born into it. This system, for all its flaws, hasn't been all bad.
So you don't necessarily have to be born into it. You don't have to be born into it at all, first of all. And he's talking about a few thousand, and the few thousand are the people who own businesses. But if you look at the numbers, there's a huge number of individual small business owners in the United States of America. So one of the things that leftist economists do, or people who support like planned economies do, is they take the makeup of the U.S. economy and they lie. They just flat out lie about what it is. At the end of the day, there are millions of small business owners in this country. Millions. Every small bar you go to, all these little restaurants. I work for a medium-sized company of like 200 employees. But what they do is they say, okay, here's Jeff Bezos and, Zuckerberg and, here's Apple and here's all these huge corporations. And then there's nothing else. And so all you have is these billionaires at the top and then all of us serfs at the bottom. It's a completely false breakdown of what the economy in the United States actually looks like.
In general, living standards have improved under capitalism for a lot of people. Capitalism is a net improvement in some ways.
In every way, and for almost every living person right now in the United States, I could go so far as to say every single person is better off right now than they were under feudalism. Every single person in the country.
From the society that preceded it. But just like feudal society became outdated, so too has capitalism. There have always been problems with this narrative of rising living standards.
Rising living standards, this is an issue. But what he's really talking about here, or maybe he doesn't realize this is what he's talking about. I'm going big on this one. Maybe he doesn't realize this is what he's talking about. What he's talking about is consumerism, right? Bigger houses, newer cars, fancier stuff, more gadgets. And we have fallen prey in this country to consumerism, to the idea that we have to have more stuff, new stuff, better stuff, and that I'm going to have more. My standard of living is going to be better than my parents, and we're going to measure that not based on the actual quality of my life, but of how many things I can collect. That is a flaw of the capitalist system that we live in. It is. Consumerism is a flaw. There is a problem with it, and we have been far too focused on, how many square feet is my house? How many gadgets do I have? How nice is my car? That's a real thing that he's scraping the surface of it, but he's not talking about the actual causes of it. And that is just bad decision making and a really good powerful marketing system in the United States that is convincing people to spend money that they should otherwise be investing and making better decisions with. That's a true flaw, but he's not painting it in the right picture.
But recently, capitalism has started to fail even the people who once got a decent shake out of it. 2 or 3 generations ago, it was a no-brainer that a job could get you a house and enough money to support a family, pay your way through college, and get access to healthcare. You weren't exactly free, but you weren't doing too badly either. That is no longer true. The few people at the top have been given so much freedom to keep the money you made for them by working in their offices, at their storefronts, and in their factories that there isn't much left for you.
Okay, so again, he's missing the point. He's missing the real flaws in our economic system. That's the problem with this video. He's missing the real flaws in our economic system. One of those is that we went away from sound money. In this period that he's talking about, this golden age of the United States where, he had one wage earner in the house. Mom typically stayed home with the kids. You could buy a house. You could get an education, all these different things. That's true. But the economy changed in fundamental ways that are not part of a free market system. We went away from sound money and we financialized the economy. That's a big part of it. So there is a way to earn money without really producing anything of value. The other part of that is that we decided we wanted bigger houses. We have the FHA now. We have all this government intervention in the housing market, which has pushed up housing prices. He goes on to talk about other things in the economy that are genuine concerns, but he blames capitalism for those things and not state intervention. So let's go on.
High school and college graduates, once guaranteed stable employment and livable wages, are losing out. Nowadays, between 40 and 50% of college grads are unemployed or working in a job that doesn't require a diploma.
Okay, can I just chime in here real quick? If you're working in a job that doesn't require a diploma, then you got a really bad diploma. If you have a college degree and you're not working in that field, you've chosen in the marketplace to go get a job outside of your chosen degree because that job pays you more. And that the reason that that's happening is because you're getting degrees in the humanities and the liberal arts that don't pay well. So there's this idea that back in the day you could do these things. Yeah, well, Dad back in the day who went out and was typically the wage earner was probably working in a factory or in a trade. And these kids don't want to do that. Look, at the end of the day, you can go to a 2-year technical school for $15,000 over the course of 2 years, become an electrician or a plumber or a carpenter, and work hard at it and apprentice yourself. And yeah, you can support a family on that income with 5 to 10 years worth of experience. In your early 30s, you are going to be part of the upper middle class, earning a very good living. This 41% of people not working, having college degrees, going in debt, getting college degrees, and then not working in their field is, well, I got a degree in liberal arts, some kind of a liberal arts degree where there's very low demand and or very low pay. And now I'm upset because society doesn't value what I do the way that I think society should value it.
Indebted at rates that completely overshadow their salaries. And the story's the same across the economy. For someone working at Amazon to make as much money as Jeff Bezos does in just 1 year, they would have to work for 58 years.
The idea that a person who puts a product in a box and loads it on a truck, and that we should compare that person's earnings to Jeff Bezos is one of the most ridiculous but purely socialist ways of viewing the world. So what happened is Jeff Bezos in the early 1990s created a company called Amazon, probably slept under his desk, probably worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, building this thing that was transformational for society based on the internet, which most people didn't even understand how it worked back then. And now he's able to hire a guy, pay that guy $15 an hour to put a product in a box, to put it on a truck or operate a forklift or something. And somehow we're supposed to take this person who ushered in a transformational way of doing business, and we're going to compare what he's earning to what the people he's hiring is earning. It's a ridiculous idea. Nobody's talking about the fact that, Patrick Mahomes makes X amount of dollars and the guy selling the hot dogs in the stadium is only making, nobody makes that comparison. Nobody compares the $20 million top actors and actresses in Hollywood get paid per movie and comparing that to what the janitor in that studio who cleans up after, at the end of the day, nobody's comparing what they make. But what we're going to do is we're going to take Jeff Bezos's money and we're going to compare it to like kind of unskilled or semi-skilled labor and create a sense of I should have more of that money. Nobody's doing that in other places, just when it comes to, large successful corporations. The idea of it is fundamentally ridiculous. It's silly, and it really just appeals to the lowest denominator of economic thought.
And that's just with his salary. If we start counting dividends, you'd be working every day of every year of multiple lifetimes just to catch up to Bezos' single lap around the sun. Clearly, it's time for an upgrade. Socialists look at this march of history and ask two questions. One, is there a better way to get the same results as produced under capitalism? And two, what is it? In other words, how do we keep the parts we like from capitalism, rising living standards, and cut out the parts we don't like, the exploitation, imbalances of power, and massively uneven distribution of those rising living standards?
Okay, I'm going to end this video on this point, and here it is. You can't. You have to have unequal distribution. You have to have imbalances in power. You have to allow merit to play a role. And the problem is, and this is what the left sells, is that the people who have all this wealth, the people who have all this success don't deserve it. And you deserve a bigger piece of it. And that's just fundamentally untrue. If you want to fix the system, if you want a more equal distribution of wealth, right? If you want less of this top-down economic management, the best way to do it is to make the market freer, is to get the state uninvolved, go back to a sound money policy where just because you happen to be closer to the printing press gives you first access to borrowing money, making the economy more free and getting the state, getting the bureaucracy out of the government or out of the economy. That's the way to make things more equal. That's, of course, not their idea. Their idea is we'll take the means of production, and we don't get into this, right? They don't talk about it, but at the end of the day, we'll seize the means of production. This is Marxism, socialism, Marxism, communism. It's all kind of the same thing. The workers deserve to own the means of production. We'll seize it. We'll put a bunch of unqualified people in charge of everything, and then we'll blame capitalism when it fails. But at the end of the day, you can't get rid of imbalances of power and unequal distribution of wealth unless you just want to make everybody poor. That's, at the end of the day, that's just how that works. So this was part 2. There's going to be a part 3. So if you enjoyed this video and enjoyed the video before, you hated it and you think I'm wrong about everything and you want to get in the comment section and tell me how wrong I am, please like and subscribe and turn on notifications so when the next video comes out, you can jump in the comment section and tell me what a horrible capitalist corporate bootlicker I am, or tell me how you agree with me and maybe sharpen up my points a little bit. Thank you all for coming. This has been Brian for Liberty, and we'll see you next time.